We were going to keep Bagram, the big air base, one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We're trying to get it back, by the way. Okay, that could be a little breaking news. We're trying to get it back.
Bagram Airbase is no longer just a piece of land in Afghanistan. It's a story of war and withdrawal, of power and politics, of victories and regrets. Trump's call to take it back raises big questions, not only about Afghanistan, but about America's role in the world and how history will remember this chapter. What do you think? Should the U.S. have held on to Bagram, or was leaving it behind the only way forward? If you enjoyed this journey through history and power, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Era Hive, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Because here, history doesn't just sit in books, it speaks. Bagram, the fortress of Afghanistan. Bagram's story didn't begin with America. It began decades earlier during the Cold War. The Soviets first expanded the airfield in the 1952nd, seeing it as a prize for their ambitions in Afghanistan. By the time the U.S. arrived after the attacks of the 11th of September 2001, Bagram was already a known military hub. But the Americans turned it into something else entirely. They poured billions of dollars into its walls, runways, and facilities. At its height, Bagram was like a city within a country. 2 massive runways capable of handling the largest aircraft in the U.S. arsenal. Housing for tens of thousands of troops, contractors, and Afghan workers. Shops, gyms, and even American fast food chains, Pizza Hut, Subway, and Burger King, to make the endless war feel a little closer to home. A military hospital where wounded soldiers from across Afghanistan were flown in for urgent treatment. And, hidden behind fences and barbed wire, a detention center that became infamous for interrogations and allegations of abuse. For American forces, Bagram was more than a base. It was the nerve center of the war. Every drone strike, every supply convoy, every major operation was planned or launched from here. From Bagram, the U.S. could reach almost any point in Afghanistan within minutes. It was also a symbol of power. For Afghans, it represented the overwhelming presence of America in their land. For U.S. troops, it was a reminder of strength and safety, a fortress in a country that often felt like quicksand. That's why when people spoke of controlling Afghanistan, they often said, "Control Bagram, and you control the country." The 2021 withdrawal and the fall of Bagram. By mid-2021, America was tired of its longest war. After nearly 20 years, thousands of lives lost, and trillions of dollars spent, President Joe Biden followed through on the plan to withdraw U.S. forces. But the way it happened shocked the world. In July 2021, American commanders quietly ordered their troops to leave Bagram. There was no official announcement, no handover ceremony. One night, the power was shut off. In the darkness, convoys of soldiers rolled out, leaving behind silent hangars and empty watchtowers. Afghan forces woke up to find the fortress abandoned. America had slipped away without a goodbye. The consequences were immediate. The Afghan army, already struggling, suddenly lost its main hub of operations. Inside Bagram, the Taliban found stockpiles of military vehicles, weapons, ammunition, and supplies. The very base that once symbolized U.S. dominance was now a prize for its enemies. And then came August 2021, the collapse of Kabul. As desperate Afghans crowded the airport in a bid to escape, critics in Washington asked the same question: why wasn't Bagram used for evacuations? Its 2 long runways, secure perimeter, and military infrastructure could have made the withdrawal smoother. Instead, images of chaos at Kabul airport burned into global memory. For many Americans, leaving Bagram wasn't just a military decision. It was a mistake that turned into a humiliation. And that humiliation is what leaders like Trump have used ever since to make their point. Trump's call to reclaim Bagram. Donald Trump has mentioned Bagram repeatedly since leaving office. In rallies, interviews, and campaign speeches, he has hammered one idea: we should have kept Bagram. But his reasoning goes beyond Afghanistan. Trump points to Bagram's location. Just a few hundred miles away lies China's western border, the province of Xinjiang, where Beijing maintains massive military installations. To the north sits Central Asia, a region where Russia still pulls strings. To the west is Iran, America's longtime rival. In Trump's view, Bagram wasn't just a base for fighting the Taliban, it was a geopolitical watchtower, perfectly placed to keep an eye on America's greatest rivals. Losing it meant losing a rare advantage in a tough neighborhood. There's also the political angle. By calling for Bagram's return, Trump criticizes Biden's handling of the withdrawal and appeals to Americans who still feel bitter about the way the war ended. For Trump, Bagram is both a symbol of lost strength and a promise of future power. When he talks about getting Bagram back, he's not just speaking as a strategist, he's speaking as a politician, drawing a line between himself and his rival. Strategic value beyond Afghanistan. To understand why Bagram matters so much, you need to look at a map. Afghanistan sits right at the crossroads of South Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East, a region surrounded by some of America's biggest rivals. From Bagram, U.S. aircraft could reach Beijing's western frontier in just a few hours. Surveillance drones could monitor movements in Xinjiang, where China has invested heavily in security and infrastructure. To the north lies Central Asia, a region Moscow still views as its backyard. And to the west, across the mountains, is Iran, a constant thorn in America's side. Military experts often call Bagram a geopolitical jewel. Unlike bases in the Persian Gulf, which depend on fragile alliances, Bagram sat inside Afghanistan, giving the U.S. direct access to a region where few other footholds exist. It wasn't just about flying missions, it was about leverage, being able to respond quickly to crises, monitor rivals, and remind the world that America had a seat at the table in Asia's most contested neighborhood. When U.S. forces left, that jewel passed into the hands of the Taliban. For China and Russia, that was welcome news, a powerful reminder that America had lost its perch in their backyard. For Trump, it became the perfect symbol of opportunity wasted. But Trump's focus on Bagram isn't only about military maps, it's also about domestic politics. For many Americans, the images of desperate Afghans clinging to planes at Kabul airport in 2021 were a humiliation. The withdrawal wasn't remembered as a careful exit from war, but as a chaotic retreat. By pointing to Bagram, Trump taps into that frustration. He frames the base as the ultimate proof of bad decision-making. We had the most powerful fortress in the region, and we just gave it away. It's a line that resonates with voters who want to see America project strength again. This is classic power projection politics. In American history, leaders have often used foreign policy symbols, whether it was the fall of Saigon in Vietnam or the hostage crisis in Iran, to argue about strength and weakness at home. Trump knows that by invoking Bagram, he's not just talking about Afghanistan. He's talking about America's image in the world and, more importantly, his own image as a strong leader. So, when Trump promises to take back Bagram, it's not really a plan. It's a message, one designed to show voters that he would restore what others lost. Here's the reality. Bagram is no longer America's to claim. When U.S. forces left, the Taliban wasted no time. They marched in and raised their flag over the meeting fortress that once symbolized American power. For them, it wasn't just a military base. It was a trophy. After 20 years of fighting, the most secure U.S. stronghold in Afghanistan was now in their hands. Since then, Taliban officials have made it crystal clear the U.S. will not be allowed back. To give up Bagram would be to admit defeat after their greatest victory. In their eyes, the base proves that they forced a superpower to retreat. That means any American attempt to return faces only two paths: negotiation with the Taliban, which looks nearly impossible. The Taliban view Bagram as a symbol of independence, not a bargaining chip. Military action, which would mean sending U.S. troops back into Afghanistan and reigniting a war that most Americans never want to fight again. And beyond the Taliban, there are others watching. China, Russia, and Iran all prefer an Afghanistan free of U.S. bases. They see Bagram in Taliban hands as a check against American influence in their region. So while Trump can talk about taking back Bagram, the reality is harsh. It would spark enormous resistance, both inside Afghanistan and across the region. Let's imagine what it would actually take for America to reclaim Bagram. First, the military challenge. Retaking the base would mean deploying tens of thousands of troops back into Afghanistan, fighting their way through Taliban defenses and holding the ground long term. That's not a raid, that's another full-scale piecemeal war. Second, the diplomatic fallout. The U.S. would face not just Taliban resistance, but also the anger of regional powers. China would see it as a direct threat to its western border. Russia would interpret it as an American attempt to claw back influence in Central Asia. Iran would almost certainly react with hostility. Even U.S. allies in Europe might question whether such a move was worth the cost. Third, the political reality at home. After 20 years of fighting, Americans are weary of war. Opinion polls show little appetite for sending troops back into Afghanistan. For any President, Trump or otherwise, the idea of retaking Bagram would come with enormous political risk. That's why experts say Trump's statements are more about rhetoric than reality. They play well in speeches, but on the ground, the odds of America actually reclaiming Bagram are close to zero. And yet, the idea still lingers because Bagram is more than just a base. It's a symbol. At its core, the story of Bagram isn't just about Afghanistan. It's about the bigger chessboard of world politics. For the Taliban, Bagram is a symbol of triumph, proof that after 20 years of struggle, they forced the most powerful military on earth to leave. For Donald Trump, it is a rallying cry, a way to highlight lost strength and promise to restore it. For China and Russia, Bagram's fall into Taliban hands is a relief, removing an American fortress from their neighborhood. That's what makes Bagram unique. Even empty, even silent, it carries meaning far beyond its runways and walls. It has become a mirror reflecting the struggles of great powers about who rises, who retreats, and who dares to project power in one of the world's toughest regions. Whether America ever sets foot in Bagram again may not matter as much as the lesson it teaches. Empires don't just fight over land, they fight over the symbols of strength and weakness that shape history. So why does Trump want Bagram back? Because it's not just an airbase, it's a story of victory and defeat, of pride and regret, of power lost and power still contested. For some, it's a reminder of America's mistakes. For others, it's a dream of what could have been, and maybe what could still be. But the truth is, Bagram today belongs to the Taliban. And in the shadows of its runways, new players, China, Russia, Iran, are watching closely. In that sense, Bagram is no longer just Afghanistan's fortress. It's part of the global struggle for dominance in the 21st century. What do you think? Should America have held on to Bagram, or was leaving it the only way to close the chapter on its longest war? If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode of Arahive, where history speaks. Because history isn't just the past, it's the voice that still shapes our future.